Welcome to the Any Given Day podcast, your ultimate destination for all things college football.
I'm Hunter,
And I'm Zach.
and together we'll be your hosts as we dive into the thrilling world of college football from the perspective of the fans.
From game previews to post-game analysis, we'll bring you the latest news, insights, and stories that make this sport so captivating.
Join us every Tuesday and Friday as we explore the traditions, pageantry, and unforgettable moments that define college football.
So whether you're a diehard fan or just getting into the game, get ready for a wild ride with the Any Given Day podcast. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Any Given Day podcast. We got a lot to go over today, some big games, arguably the best game of the year so far. We'll talk about that later on. But we're going to start off with a very awful game. We got Auburn versus Texas A&M.
It was bad. It was bad. Bad. I mean, Auburn looked terrible on offense.
Yep.
And just, I can't, 3 different quarterbacks, 56 yards total between all 3 of them.
Yeah, 56 total. Yards.
They're going to, Peyton Thorne ain't it. I know that.
No.
Ashton, as athletic as he is, he's not it right now. This Holden Griner, however you pronounce his name, isn't it either.
I don't know who. They're going to have to figure something out. The offenses looked awful. I mean, the defense doesn't look bad. The defense, held, A&M to 27 points?
Yeah.
It's not bad, but the offense was awful.
It really was bad. And you look at the difference between Auburn struggling to find a quarterback and Texas A&M actually being fine without their starter, Connor Weigman. Max Johnson came in after Weigman left with an injury, and he just looked lights out, amazing. So A&M has to feel real confident in the fact that if their starter goes down, they've got a really competent player behind him. And that kind of shows how good Jimbo can be.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like we've seen the worst of Jimbo these past year or two. It's astounding. Truly, I don't think anyone really expected it to end up like that. And I think Jimbo almost felt bad enough for Auburn to where he's like, hey, I'll sub for one of my players. Let me on the field and I'll make a tackle, or I'll try to make a tackle. And maybe, but no, apparently he's just really, really mad at one of the refs that play.
Yeah, Auburn fans should not be hitting the panic button yet. It's year one. Hugh Freeze, it's going to take time. You can't expect Hugh Freeze to come in there and take over an Auburn team that wasn't great last year and be a national championship contender or even contend in the SEC this year. They'll be good. Hugh Freeze can recruit. If anything, he can recruit, and he can scheme up an offense. So I wouldn't hit the panic button yet.
Yeah, and we'll get a bit more into this later, but you kept hearing about this, top-rated recruiting class and all this stuff, right? But at the end of the day, a lot of these guys that do hit the transfer portal, yes, a chunk of them were starters at their old schools, like Peyton Thorne, who was a starter up at Michigan State. But, they also, you have a lot of guys that are transferring that were third or fourth string guys. And we'll delve a bit more into that when we get to Colorado versus Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't, especially with the first year of a new head coach, you cannot get overhyped. It's almost impossible. Like, look what happened with Nick Saban over at Alabama their first year. They lost to Louisiana Monroe I think, or was it Lafayette, Louisiana Lafayette?
I believe it was Lafayette.
It was one of the Louisiana schools, one of the small Louisiana schools, and they lost to them. And you look at Kirby Smart, a loss to Vanderbilt under his first season, hasn't happened since. Nick Saban hasn't lost to one of those small schools since. You got to go and get past the first year, which with Auburn, it seems, is a pretty hard thing to do because you see what happened with Brian Harsin. After 1 year, they had boosters ready to basically attempt a coup against him.
Right.
Do I think Harsin was ready for the SEC? Probably not, but you don't go and try and fire someone after their first year. You look at what happened with Mississippi State and Joe Moorhead a few years ago. 1 year, didn't even give him a chance to go and try to get his own recruiting classes in there. But you also look at what came out of that. Mike Leach was in the SEC for his last few years, which was amazing to watch because as interesting of a personality as Mike Leach is, and now you've got him in the same conference as Nick Saban and some of those guys, it was amazing to watch, amazing TV to watch. But still, like, that's kind of one of the that was the outlier, I should say, to that entire ordeal. They should not have gone and tried to attempt a coup on Harsin that soon. And now you're kind of seeing how all that is affecting them now, I should say, because Auburn at this point is still trying to recover from that. All these recruits saw that, hey, even your boosters don't want you. Why should I want to go to Auburn right now? They don't want you there. Why should I want to play under you? I'm good, and they're different places. So it hurt them. You have to have the boosters, the athletic director, the coach, all on the same page, and it really helps if you got the president on the same page with all of them too. So it was like watching the biggest dumpster fire ever over the past 2 years, and they're flipping out over one loss. Well, not one loss, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
It's going to take them a while to come back from this. Whereas Texas A&M, they might be onto something with Petrino being the OC. I mean, what do you think about how they looked?
I mean, they looked strong offensively. Obviously, they didn't look as strong against like Miami. But they've looked good. So I don't want to be too quick to say Texas A&M is good and they've figured it out, because I don't know how much of that, this game anyways, is A&M's figured it out as much as Auburn's just in a state of disarray right now, and they're still figuring it out. Like I said, it's going to take a little while. So I think A&M's a better team than they were week one, definitely. So they're going to keep improving. But Bobby Petrino's been pretty good so far. The offenses look good, especially in this game. So we'll see where we go from there, though.
It's going to be interesting because I think Alabama does come to Kyle Field at some point this year.
Yeah, later this year, yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see then. That's going to be a good one to watch.
That'll be the big test, yeah.
But speaking of Bama, they had Ole Miss this past week, and on our picks, we both ended up picking Ole Miss, even though I was quoted as saying "Don't F on Saban," and I was right, but I was wrong on the pick. And I could have sworn up and down this might, if it's not this year, it'll never happen with Lane Kiffin over at Ole Miss. I do stand by that, and I thought Ole Miss could have pulled it out. But that defense showed up. They held Ole Miss down. Granted, they were leading at halftime, but which is concerning, especially after a player-led meeting, players-only meeting for that USF game, where they just looked terrible. But The defense looked great. And after that interception, Jalen Milroe went off. I mean, in total, he was 17 for 21, I think, 225 yards, touchdown, interception. He looked lost before that interception.
Yeah.
The interception, like things clicked. 9 for 11, which 81% completion percentage. Touchdown, averaging about 14 and a half yards per attempt. I think Louise, here it is. 6 of those 9 passes that he completed were for first downs, and then 4 of those 9 were 20-plus yards. So something finally clicked. Maybe we'll have to wait and see.
Right.
Maybe if everything's finally clicked. But what were your thoughts on it?
I mean, like we both picked Ole Miss, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and I was confident going into that game. Oh yeah, I mean, I was confident going into that game. Alabama hadn't shown me anything offensively that they could keep up with Ole Miss. And we were kind of right. I mean, in the first half, it was close, but eventually the depth that Alabama has, obviously they're, I believe, the most talented team composite ranking wise in college football right now. So that depth they have on defense really won out. I mean, Milroe looked a little turnover prone there for that first half, but like you said, after that interception, something clicked and you figured something out. So that's good to see. They started doing a little bit more running. So, I mean, Bama's run game did really well. Jace McClellan had 17 carries for 105 yards and a touchdown. So, I mean, maybe Bama figured something out. I hope they do, because it's always fun to see a good Bama team. You want there to be competition. But
oh yeah, it really is. I think the most astounding thing is if you were to look at it on paper, Jalen Milroe looked like the better quarterback between him and Jackson Dart, because Jackson Dart, he threw 35 passes and only completed 20 of them. That's 15 that weren't there. One of those was an interception, and
right, no touchdowns. So
Milroe threw almost as many yards as Jackson Dart with a lot less attempts, and that's good. But it also kind of shows what kind of quarterback he is. He's going to throw the deep ball a lot more. Like I said, 4 of those passes were 20-plus yards, so that helps, obviously. I want, I love Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. I love it. It's funny. It's just fun to watch. Do you think he's gone and reached the ceiling that he can over at Ole Miss?
I don't want to say yes, but I'm pretty sure, yeah. He's pretty much accomplished everything he's going to be able to with where they're at now.
Mm-hmm. Great party town.
Oh, yeah.
But
it's just that the talent, they don't really have the talent there, and Kiffin's Kiffin. Kiffin is always going to Kiffin. He's got that baggage with him that he'll have for the rest of his career with everything that's happened. I don't know really. I mean, I don't know really what else he can do.
I don't want to see him leave Ole Miss, because I think that would be the end of an era. But
yeah,
you look at he's not going to be able to get as many top tier recruits as he wants, because it's in Mississippi. And that's not a knock on Mississippi. I've drove through Mississippi before. It's beautiful. It's just, it just feels like there's not a lot to do in Mississippi, though.
Right.
And that's terrible to say, but with Athens, it's like, okay, you're this far from Atlanta, Booming City, capital of the South. With Tuscaloosa, you got a bunch of great barbecue.
Right. I mean, you look out west, you get USC. I mean, you're in LA pretty much. I mean, there's a lot of other colleges that have a lot more to offer. All right, jumping on over to the Florida State versus Clemson game. This was one heck of a game. I mean, came down to overtime. Florida State survived a game they probably shouldn't have. Clemson should have won that game. I mean, Clemson played their best game of the year and probably should have won. But for some reason, Dabo, like we talked about last week, Dabo doesn't want to play into the portal, and because of that, he has a kicker who shouldn't be his starting kicker who missed a chip shot field goal to beat number 4 Florida State.
Yeah, I mean you're not really wrong with any of that, and kudos to him for just being like, hey, I was going to get this job, but I'll definitely come back and start for y'all. That's a dream come true. But no, I mean, it was insane. I saw the story about it, and I wanted to kind of mention it on the podcast last week. I don't think we got to it, if I remember. We didn't. But I was just insane. This kid already had a job lined up in New York and was 2 weeks away from starting that, and then Dad was like, hey, want to come be our starting kicker? It's like, yeah, sure, okay, yeah, why not?
Right. I mean, it's just so frustrating to watch because Clemson dominated this football game. All right? Mm-hmm. They dominated it.
Really good, actually.
Yeah, I mean, they should have won this football game. And they come in there and crap the bed because Dabo won't. He won't move forward with the times, and it's so frustrating because Clemson has the potential to be so good.
They do.
And he's just throwing it away. He's throwing it down the drain, and it is so frustrating to watch.
It really is, and it's like we've said already on these podcasts. But the only NIL he believes in is God's name, image, and likeness. And he refuses to use the transfer portal. And it's coming back to bite them. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. He's going to have a hard look in the mirror after this season. And he's going to either retire, which he's a great coach. He shouldn't retire this early. Or he's going to have to figure out, hey, I need to use this transfer portal. I need to use NIL funds. I need to do this. But he's so against it.
Right.
And that's great. But we're not in that era where you keep everything under the table anymore. We're at the point where you need to use that to stay competitive. And just it's like you said, they should have won that game, but they didn't. And it's just like I hate going in on Dabo like this. I think he's goofy as all get out, but I think he's a great coach. He's a great motivator.
He's a great person. I want to see him succeed. He's such a great person, and he cares about those kids, but he's just not putting in the effort and moving forward with the times that it's going to take for them to win football games. And it's frustrating, but
and Mike Norvell and it's not a knock on Mike Norvell at all.
No.
They came to play at the end of the day. They showed up when they needed to.
Right.
And it's Jordan Travis threw for 289 yards, almost 300. He got 2 touchdowns. They showed up to play at the end when they needed to.
Yep.
They won. Should they have, like you said? Probably not. Clemson probably should have won. But I also fear how bad it could have been had that not been played at Clemson. If that had been played at Tallahassee, it
would have been much worse.
Could have been much worse. But it didn't. But still, it's I hate that we're going back to it, but it's just so frustrating. And I hate just reiterating the point over and over and over. I know people don't want to hear it, but it's frustrating to see this. And until Dabo's like, okay, we'll use the transfer portal, Clemson is not going to be contending.
No.
They're basically out of playoff contention at this point. Because they're more than likely not going to be able to get to the ACC championship.
Not at this point with 2 losses. I mean, their championship
conference losses.
Yeah, I mean, their season championship-wise is pretty much over. They're playing for a consolation prize, maybe a bowl game at this point, but they're not going to the playoffs, more than likely. They're not going to the ACC championship, more than likely.
They might sneak into a New Year's Bowl. Maybe.
If they win out from here, which I don't think they will, if they play like they did in this game and can finish, sure. They could win out and possibly get in a New Year's Six Bowl, maybe the playoffs if there's some chaos. But I don't think there will be. And it's just frustrating. I mean, not to knock Florida State at all. I mean, they have some dogs at wide receiver. I mean, Keon Coleman. Yeah, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson. I mean, the 50-50 balls are more like 80-20 balls when you throw it up to them.
They're like long, lanky, but not like they're not
big. Right.
But they're like, there's some tall boys with long arms, and you throw it in their vicinity, they're going to be whoop.
Yeah. Fine. So, I mean, really, the moral of the story here is it's such a shame that Clemson has fallen off as much as they have with the talent that they have. I mean, they have a lot of good players. They just, I don't know.
Like we've already said, lack of transfer portal. Speaking of the transfer portal, though, Colorado, wow. And I quote, they fight for clicks, we fight for wins.
They showed Dan Lanning had something to prove in this game.
He got tired of it. He got tired of it quick and in a hurry.
Yeah.
That is very much a man who's from the Kirby Smart, Nick Saban tree of coaching.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they were up, 24-0, 35-0 maybe at half.
It was bad. It was so bad.
I mean, they interviewed Dan Lanning at half and say, well, what do you think of your team's performance so far? And he's like, well, I'm not done yet. We're not done yet.
Now, granted,
you're destroying them. We're not done yet.
In the second half, they only scored 1 touchdown. I think they only scored 1 touchdown.
That's all they needed. I mean,
yeah, but he made it sound like they were going to come back out and score 4, 5, 6 more touchdowns, and they didn't. But still, I mean, the moment they went for the 2-point conversion after the first touchdown.
Oh yeah,
it was like the moment I was like, oh, he's mad.
Yeah, I mean. If you look all week leading up, he was on ESPN, I think, SportsCenter, and they're asking him questions, and the first 3 questions weren't about his team, weren't about how his team was doing, how he thought they would do. It was about, well, what do you think about Deion? What do you think about what Deion's doing? What do you think about what Colorado's doing? And I think he was just so tired of it going to this game. He said, we're going to put an end to this Cinderella story. It's over. It's done.
Yeah. Yeah. It ain't being played in Hollywood. It's being played on this grass right here. And
right.
He proved that, dear Lord. I mean, Bo Nix went off. He was very bodacious during this game.
He looked good. He looked really good.
Very good. Only 5 incompletions on the day, 28 of 33, 276 yards, 3 touchdowns. Granted, he did have the 1 interception, but still you're gonna risk that when you're doing all of that. So
right.
The offense. I was fixing to say O-line, meaning D-line. It's whatever. We make mistakes, people. The offense looked amazing in the first half. It was terrible. It was honestly hard to watch at some point, and the defense went off as well. Like Shedeur Sanders had no time.
No.
And the fact he got, I think he went 23 of 33. So, I mean, he still had a pretty decent completion percentage. It's just, he was not, he had no protection. That O-line is trash right now. 7 sacks.
Yeah. I mean, you could say anemic, maybe?
Yes. It was I think it was more anemic than Alabama's O-line.
Yes. I mean,
there you go. I said it.
Shedeur looked good. I mean, considering the circumstances, considering how bad the offensive line was, he was on his back all game.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was bad,
real bad. And that kind of leads to a point about Colorado that needs to be made. And the primetime factor. Like they were going viral because it's Deion Sanders as the head coach. He's gonna look at them. They've got 3 wins. They beat the second place team from last year in TCU, a national title contender, right? And that's great, and that's a great win. Do not get me wrong, but they were still a 1-loss team last year, or a 1-win team. My bad.
1-win team, yeah.
11 losses, 2 wins, 11. They were an 11-loss team last year with 1 win, and they reached into the transfer portal and got 80 different players out of there. Now, and this is going back to Auburn and their top transfer portal recruiting class and all that. A lot of these guys coming from the transfer portal, a lot of them, like one of their top receivers, I can't remember the dude's name to save my life. Something J, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He came in from Florida State, and he looks great over at Colorado, but he was the 3rd, 4th string guy over at Florida State.
Right.
For a reason. And you're going out there competing against Dan Lanning's defense, who depending on which person you ask, Dan Lanning could possibly be the favorite to take over for Nick Saban after Saban retires over at Alabama.
Entirely possible, yeah.
It's either him or it's going to be Glenn Schumann. One of those two.
One of those two, yeah.
Or it might be Dan Lanning and he goes and gets Glenn Schumann as his DC. I
don't know.
But it's going to be just reloading if it is either one of them. Right. But with that Dan Lanning defense, they weren't going to go and do much, and they didn't. It was bad. It was an almost massacre. Even Deion said it was a butt whooping. And
it was a butt whooping.
He didn't even hold it against Dan Lanning. It's
no,
just like
it's football. I mean,
the one thing that people need to realize is they're not going to be like this forever. But like we said, this is his first year as the head coach. You got to give him more than 1 year. And when you have all these celebrities all of a sudden who are Colorado fans because Primetime's the coach, not only are you pushing out actual Colorado alumnus and actual Colorado fans,
right,
making it hard for them to get in and see the games and all that, which, don't get me wrong, it's great that their ticket prices are able to go up because that's how much everyone wants to go to a game all of a sudden. That's great. But it's made it unbearable. A lot of people wanted to see Colorado lose because of the celebrities. And a lot of them didn't even know that much about Colorado. They don't know the tradition, the pageantry with it. But, Primetime, that's my team now. No.
Right.
Primetime is your guy. You don't know anything about that team. Just
right.
Right. You want to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of saw that coming. Like, we both picked Oregon to win pretty handily, and they destroyed the money line. I mean, it's what I thought would happen. I mean, Colorado, they were never going to be a national championship contender this year. It was a nice story, but the story's over. So
maybe 2 to 3 years from now, maybe.
Oh yeah, they'll be good. Yeah. They're still better than they were last year. Much better.
Yeah, season's already a success. They've got more wins than they did last year, but they were so overhyped that you actually had this one dude, I think over at Fox, who was saying, I don't get why Vegas is giving Colorado 21 points. I don't know why it's Oregon minus 21. Colorado's played a better defense than what Oregon's got. And it's like, tell me you don't watch college football without telling me you watch college football. Like, and that is your job. Your job is to know this stuff. And you're saying that? Have you? Why?
Right.
Leave your job. Recommend me. I will gladly take your job to be paid to talk about sports, about college football. It's as simple as turning the TV on and watching. Yes, like you said, Colorado, great story. Great story. They weren't going to ever beat Oregon.
No, never. I don't think they're going to beat USC next week either.
Oh, no.
We'll get to that later, obviously.
I mean, USC doesn't have much of a defensive line to rush them. They got one guy who's...
Right. Yeah, we'll get to that later. Let's move on real quick to Utah versus UCLA. Not as high of a scoring game as I thought it would be. I mean, only 14-7, Utah winning. It was... I mean, UCLA did good. They fought. Dante Moore fought. His stats weren't great. 15 for 35. 234 yards. Oh, yeah. True freshman, yeah. So, I mean, what the biggest thing I took away from this game is Utah cannot rely on their defense to win this year. If they want to be national contenders, they can't rely on their defense. They have to get Cam Rising back. They have to have somebody that can lead that offense.
Yeah, because you imagine if this offense had... Imagine if Dante Moore had like an extra year or two in this offense right now. Or imagine if, this was last year against this defense. It wouldn't have been pretty. Chip Kelly's innovative mind when it comes to the offense. Now, granted, it's great that they were able to hold him to 7 points. But like I said earlier, true freshman quarterback. What are you going to do? They need Cam Rising back, because their defense is probably one of the better defenses in the Pac-12. I put them second to Dan Lanning in Oregon. But they need Cam Rising, because if they're able to go to that defense, put a stop to an offense, they need him to go and lead that offense and get them down the field and score. They need to score. They can't be doing this two-quarterback thing each and every time, up and out. It won't end well. It never really does.
Which they only played Nate Johnson this game, and he was only 9 for 17, 117 yards, which isn't great. I mean, Utah is a really good team, and they should be competing in the Pac-12 this year. If they play like that, they're not standing a chance against Oregon or USC.
No. What is it that Cam Rising is out with right now? It's like some kind of shoulder.
He had an Achilles tear last year, I believe.
Ooh, okay,
or he had something with his leg in the bowl game last year, or late in the year last year. I think it was Pac-12 championship game last year. Actually,
he might be gone. He might be out for like another few weeks still yet.
Yeah, it'll be a couple. They just gotta survive until he can get back, because this team is good and they can win.
They are. They really are.
They need a quarterback though, and they don't have one right now. They have a glorified running back. No offense to Nate Johnson.
He's still the best option they got.
He's still the best option. He's just a glorified running back that can kind of throw the ball. So if they want to compete, they're going to have to get Cam Rising back. And they just got to survive until then. So we'll see how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on. Big tight game this week. I didn't think this was going to be as tight as it was. But Arkansas versus LSU, 34-31. LSU kicks a field goal with 5 seconds left to take the lead. I mean, if you told me this was going to be the final score, I wouldn't have believed you based off of the Mississippi State game.
Mm-hmm. I think
that
it was.
LSU played.
I think the stat was it was either the last 3 games or the last 4 games in this series have been decided by 3 points.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So They fight for that Golden Boot. I hate it for Sam Pittman. I think he's probably one of the most likable coaches in the entire SEC,
If not the
and
nation, yeah.
if not the nation. That is just a blue collar, hardworking man right there, who just after a hard day of work wants to go and sit down and have a nice cold beer.
Right.
But it's like I don't think he's on the hot seat yet.
No.
Because I think what Arkansas's main problem is, besides talent, they don't have the depth and talent that a lot of the other SEC West teams have. I think their main problem is they play down to their opponent's level or up to their opponent's level. So you put them in a game against LSU, they can give them a fight.
Right.
If they play Vandy, they'll win, but they might let Vandy score a few points, more points than they should score.
Right. I mean, KJ Jefferson did really well. It was a really good game from him. I mean, 21 for 31, 289 yards, 3 touchdowns. Now, he did have 2 interceptions. He was a little turnover prone there, but still, I mean, another 16 carries for 48 yards on the ground. He's a good quarterback, and this Arkansas team is a good team. Like you said, though, it's just depth. They don't have that depth to keep up with an SEC schedule like Georgia and Alabama, LSU. They don't have that depth.
Plus, I mean, he wasn't the best quarterback in this matchup.
No.
He was like 20 completions, 9 incompletions, over 300 yards, I think 320, and then 4 touchdowns to 1 interception. Yeah. So it's Jayden Daniels is, I think, low-key a dark horse for the Heisman this year.
I was about to ask. I mean, do you think it's time to start considering him for a Heisman campaign? I don't know. There's not really been anybody that's taken it. And, I mean, Caleb Williams, I guess, kind of has, but there's not really a secondary.
Voter fatigue. I don't think Caleb Williams wins it unless he's just head and shoulder above
whoever else is there. So
I don't think Caleb Williams will end up winning it. I think Drake May has a legit shot because North Carolina's very quietly undefeated right now.
Yeah.
LSU they've been struggling, man.
Yeah.
And it's like you look at Brian Kelly's first year there last year and it was like, wow. And like he in theory should not have made it to the SEC championship.
No.
Everyone's picking them to make it to the SEC championship this year, if not the playoffs. If they play like they did, if they keep playing like they did against Florida State, no. And I think once again, there's another. I think this game was a perfect mixture of one team playing down to their opponent's level and the other one playing up to their opponent's level.
Yep.
And you could clearly see that.
Yeah, I mean, in this sport, you got to play to a standard. You can't play to your opponent. You got to play to a standard. So, I mean, obviously, LSU hasn't been playing to that standard. So, I mean, we'll see how they can continue this year, but
I mean,
as of right now, Malik Neighbors has been having great games. It's just a matter of
yards, another 100-plus yard game again.
Yeah, he just can't do it by himself. So
yeah,
they're going to have to figure it out defensively and offensively.
Double covering him. So
moving on, I guess, to the only game we disagreed on. Oregon State, Washington State. Yeah. I'm ready to listen. Go ahead.
No, I mean, just you were right. I was wrong.
Thank you.
There we go. Cam Ward. Holy crap! You want to talk about?
He had a game.
You want to talk about Heisman dark horses? If he keeps playing like this for the rest of the year, he'll win it hands down. I think.
Oh yeah, he had a game.
I mean, only like 400 over 400 yards for the entire game.
Yeah.
But he had like 200 something at halftime.
Yeah.
It was astounding. And then that's just poor DJU. He
did not have a good game.
No, he had a bad game. He looked great the past few games, and now I am very much confused on whose fault it was over at Clemson.
They both looked awful. I don't know. Dabo's looked awful. DJU's looked not great in this game anyways. He's looked good up until this point, so I don't know anymore. Maybe it was both.
I guess we'll just go with the standard of DJU has one less loss than Clemson does right now.
Yeah, so technically he's winning. Yeah, technically he's winning right now.
He's winning right now. He's still... It's not my fault. I have one less loss.
I do have a question, though. Does this make Washington State the Pac-2 champion?
The Tupac champ?
The Tupac champ.
I guess technically right now, unless
there's a
rematch.
Unless they both magically make it to the Pac-12 championship in the last year of the Pac-12.
Yeah, which would be hilarious.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love it. It's not going to happen, but I'd love it.
Still, I think if Wazoo keeps playing like this,
they could be a dark horse contender. So.
Very much dark horse contender, and they looked great.
Yeah, it was a shootout. It was a really good game, though.
Yeah, not much defense. A lot of offense. Honestly, if anyone knows Wazoo, we're kind of used to that. Now, granted, not as great in the past few years, but when Mike Leach was over there, really good. Great air raid offense. But...
moving on to arguably the game of the year so far, anyways.
I'll let you start. Because I'm gonna go off. I'm going to go off on a certain defensive coordinator.
Ohio State, Notre Dame. Obviously, Ohio State pulls it off in the final seconds of the game. It was a hard-fought game. I didn't know who was going to win. Obviously, we both picked Notre Dame, but we were both agreed it was going to come down to the last second, and it did, quite literally.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And we very much said it will probably come down to the last drive. We have a clip about it.
And it did.
On TikTok, YouTube clips, or YouTube Shorts, Twitter. We've got clips everywhere, people.
Yeah. Notre Dame lost that game.
Yes.
They had it won. They had them 8 seconds left, I think, or 15 seconds left on their 40 or 35, and just awful defense.
Can I go in?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I am sick and tired. Of seeing coaches run a soft shell zone coverage scheme when the offense is in your territory. When the offense is still on their side of the field, and they've got 60, 70 yards they've still got to go, fine. But holy crud, what are you thinking? The moment they get inside your part of the field, you should be sending at least 5 people each time. I get the thought process of stopping them before they can get into the red zone or get down to the 1 or something like that, and having as many defense backs out on the field as possible and cover guys. But holy crud, how many times does this come back and bite someone in the tail? It's terrible. Oh my gosh. That was the maddest I have ever been at a college game, I think, before. It was so bad. I was calling for Al Golden to be kicked from the dadgum locker room and his office and have all of his stuff shipped back to his house that night. How do you have to rush once they're inside your field to record great game out of him, but he, in my eyes, I wasn't able to watch the entire thing because I have a job that goes pretty late into the night. But from what I saw, when they sent a 5-man rush, they were able to get back there, not necessarily sack him every time, but they were able to pressure him, make him feel the pressure, make him hurry up and rush a throw. If they had just done that, everything probably is different. They didn't. That soft shell zone coverage, as the moment I saw they only had 3 down linemen and there was no one else in the box, I was like, they're going to lose this game because of this play. Sure enough, McCord gets it to his wide receiver down at the 1. 2 plays later, Travion Henderson, with no time left, runs it into the deadgum end zone.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
I was so bad.
I mean, Kyle McCord did really good, considering it is only his 4th start as a college quarterback.
Big win for him.
37, 240 yards. Yeah, it was a good game. I mean, y'all know we're both Georgia fans, and we're unbiased here. But that is the most nervous I have been watching a college football game that wasn't a Georgia football game. Just that last drive made me so nervous. I have butterflies. It was a fantastic game. And for a game to end like that is awesome. Like I said, game of the year contender. It was an awesome game. Obviously, we picked Notre Dame to win, but it was an awesome, awesome game. Both teams played their hearts out. Yeah, both wrong. But, both teams played their hearts out. It was a spectacular game.
And did you see the end, like Ryan Day's post-game interview where he was like, "Where's Lou Holtz at?" I was like, buddy, do not. He still outclasses you.
Mm-hmm.
He's got more championship rings than you. He's got more pedigree than you. Do not. You still have not got the right to call him out. And
right.
He had every right at that point in time when he was on the McAfee show earlier in the week to question Ohio State's toughness. Ohio State has not been one of the tougher teams in college football in a bit. Their best game in the Ryan Day era so far, up to Saturday possibly, had been the Peach Bowl against Georgia. So let's be very clear on that.
Right.
The fact you're going to call out an 86-year-old man at the end who was just sharing his opinion, dude, grow up. You were soft.
Right.
I'd take Lou Holtz in that fight.
Right. Ryan Day has, I want to say slowly, but it hasn't really been slowly. He's made himself one of the most unlikable coaches in college football.
Born on
He's
third.
just not a likable guy at all. He has nothing for me to want to root for him. I just don't like him personally, but that doesn't really matter. So, you got any final thoughts on this game?
Not much. Besides get a different defense coordinator for Notre Dame. Let me say this, because I do not want to miss this. Ohio State's defense looked great. I give them that. And that was probably, like I said, that was probably one of the more physical games I've seen them play in forever. But up to this point, Lou Holtz had every right to question your physical toughness. And then you want to go spout off about, where's he at? Where's he at? It's us against the world. It's Ohio against the world like it's always been. Yeah, because Ohio has pretty much a bunch of unlikable people from it.
Mm-hmm.
We've met someone from Ohio that we don't really care for.
Yes.
And they're bye.
Right.
So ain't much good comes out of Ohio. Let me put it that way.
Obviously.
Now, granted, we're still going to do our best to remain as unbiased as possible, but Ryan Day makes that really hard, guys.
Yes, he does.
So hard. Just, eh.
Yeah, I agree. Let's wrap it up here. We got a couple more things to hit on, but let's wrap it up. We got our head-to-head records. Obviously, we are tied now.
Yeah, we were tied. There was a bit of a debate before the show started. This morning,
somebody can't count. All right, somebody can't count.
I am bad. I'm bad at math. I'm very bad at math.
Obviously.
But I could have sworn I was up by 1, and no, I wasn't. We did math. We're tied, people.
We're tied 12-4 each, so not a bad record. Not a bad record.
Not a bad record at all.
So that's fun. Like we said earlier, we'll have a punishment for whoever's losing at the end of the year. We'll figure that out at some point, but
still got to figure that out.
Yeah, but that'll be fun. Obviously, we got some big games next week. There's some of the games we're going to be talking about on Friday's episode. We got Utah versus Oregon State. That'll be a big one. Can DJU bounce back against a really tough defense?
Will Utah's defense actually hold up?
Yeah. Will Utah's defense hold up? Texas A&M versus Arkansas. Obviously, A&M coming off that big win versus Auburn, and Arkansas coming off a heartbreaking loss against LSU. That's going to be a fun one.
Yep.
USC versus Colorado. Obviously, Colorado's Cinderella story kind of just ended, but
yeah.
We'll see if they can get back on track. No, I don't think they will, but we'll see if they can get back on track. Florida versus Kentucky. It's always a fun game.
Always a fun game. Always a
fun game. Kind of an odd one here, but Kansas versus Texas. I know normally you don't think Kansas big game, but undefeated Kansas versus undefeated Texas.
And they beat Texas a year or two ago.
Austin.
In Austin, that was a big upset. That was just one of the stories of the year up to that point. Lance Leipold, I think, is Kansas's coach's name. Great coach.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great coach. He's been able to turn them around, and there might be just a bit more than a basketball school at this point.
See if they got some magic.
Yeah.
Obviously, we got LSU versus Ole Miss. It's going to be an exciting game to look at. Always a good game. Notre Dame versus Duke. Can Duke pull off some magic for the second time this year and take down another top 25 team? Not that Clemson's ranked anymore, but can they do it?
College Game Day is actually going to be at Duke for the first time ever.
Really? That's awesome.
Non-basketball related, solely because of this game.
That's awesome.
It really is. It's great.
And our big game next week, UGA versus Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be – it's always an exciting game, especially when you go to Jordan-Hare. It's a tough place to play, so we'll see if Georgia can go in there and win or if Auburn's going to pull it off. Freaky magic voodoo. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Any Given Day podcast. We appreciate you guys joining us and being a part of our discussion. Make sure to subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can find us under the name Any Given Day Podcast.
Stay updated with our latest episodes and insights. And don't forget, the next episode will be out on Friday, where we'll dive into some of the big games coming up this weekend. Until then, keep the spirit of the game alive, and remember, in this sport, anything can happen on any given day. See y'all on the next play.